Welcome to Present Tense Seminar 2A on digital tools. At this point in the curriculum, we need to start thinking about building our presence and sharing our vision with others in many ways. So what are the tools we need to do this? If you take a look at where we are in the curriculum, we're wrapping up the first phase of inspiration, when we start to share inspiration with others through different media. And we'll discuss sharing the vision that we've begun to develop, as well as positioning ourselves within our environment in addition to following and tracking others' presences in that same market. Let's take a look at this video, if you click through, and see what it means to be part of the social media revolution of today. When you're done, come back and we'll move on to sharing vision. Part one of this session is about getting your name out there for the reasons of building your own credibility and achieving buy-in. So you may be thinking at this point in the process, you're not ready to get out there and create a Facebook page and share your name and tell everyone what you're doing. You may feel others will take your idea. You may feel it's not developed enough. We understand this. And to that we say two things. One, this can be just your toolbox. You can always return to it at a later time if you're not quite ready for this step. Second, and we'll actually push you on this, we feel that it's never too early to start putting yourself out there, to start building a buzz and momentum around what you do, to start getting feedback, to start gathering some buy-in, to start putting it out there to see what the response is in the market. It's always going to change. It's never going to be perfect, and that's true with even very established products and services. So we encourage you through this process to choose the few tools that really speak to you and start experimenting. And then as you go, you can only build further. As I mentioned, there are a couple reasons that we feel this is important. Number one, as you start to speak to people and share your idea, potentially your name, they're going to check you up. They're going to look at you on Google. They're going to perhaps see if you have a Facebook presence. And it really builds your credibility to start to create that space for yourself so that they see you're real, you've started to establish yourself, you have a name and you have a base. And through that process, you also start to garner buy-in. When people are excited about what you do, when they're on board, when they see that this is really developing into something, that'll help you just build your base of support, which is really critical at this stage. And last, as you start to look around at others in the market, which we've done through environmental scanning, it's important to see where you fit relative to others and to position yourself accordingly, to put yourself out there and perhaps differentiate yourself through your branding, or depending on who's in your target market, that's a way to do it. This gives you a couple tools to put yourself out there so that others will see you as slightly different or collaborative with others in the same important space. So let's get started. You're going to need a place to park yourself. Just like in the real world when you buy an apartment or a house, real estate is key, and location, location, location is what it's all about. So at this stage, we'll just mention the elements of digital real estate, which is basically creating your online presence. Now, not all of you will need a website, and I want to put that out there. Some of you are part of an existing organization already, and maybe you can build a new page. Some of you aren't creating a new organization, and that's okay. But it's easier than you might think to actually create a website, and therefore it may be worth it. And either way, we want to provide you with some of the tools. So many of you have probably heard about GoDaddy during the Super Bowl commercials, and GoDaddy is probably the most mainstream option for buying a domain. And this is where you can go on and check if your chosen URL is taken. You can register it for a year. It's generally a very, very reasonable annual price. And if you go online and find that someone else has taken your name, don't fret. You can check out who it is and see if there's any way to get it from them. So this next tool here on the bottom of the page is called Whois. Who is behind that domain? And here is where you can again enter that URL, press search, and a list will pop up explaining who owns that domain name, what their name is, where they live, what their email is, I think the date they've had it for, the length of time they've had it for, and that also enables you to contact them. And who knows, maybe they own 100 domains and this isn't one they need anymore. If it happens that your URL is taken and it's taken by a source that uses it often, start thinking about other ways to be creative with that name, brainstorm with your buddies and with your cluster, and I'm sure that there are ways to get around it. And don't think it's enough to just check out your website presence or the other URLs out there. There's so many social networks that might be using your name or a similar name that it's important to know. And rather than spend all your time going through 27 different social networks, there's this one great tool that allows you to do it all at once. It's called Namecheck, namechk.com. You can check it out, enter your desired name, and it'll take a minute to populate all of these networks, showing you whether it is taken or used. As you see, some of them that show up you won't care too much about because there'll be networks that you've never heard of that don't have too huge of an audience. Maybe again you can be creative and use it a little differently on something like Twitter or one of the bigger spaces, but this is just a way again before you start to gauge who else is out there. And I'll just mention as I go along through these tools, feel free to pause and stop and open a browser and check them out as we go, because the whole point is that everything we chose is really easy and quick. It's easy to pick up. Oftentimes it's free. Sometimes it's freemium, where it begins free and then only costs money as you get a little more advanced. So we really recommend that as you go, you use these tools, you demo them to see just how easy they are, and you continue to come back to them so that you always have them in your toolkit. Now, once you have your domain, your URL, where do you get the website? And it used to be that a website was a really big deal. It took lots of time and lots of money and lots of expertise. And obviously, this is the case if this is for a much larger company where you're looking to build a very sophisticated website. But where you guys are right now, all you need is a really basic site. You can always build as you go. And there are a couple free services out there that are just amazing in terms of their ease of use and the sophistication of the site that they will produce. So we encourage you to check out two in particular, including Weebly and Wix. Weebly we've been using for years at Present Tense. All of our fellowship sites like NewYorkCityFellowship.com is hosted on Weebly. It is a drag and drop service, so you can choose a template. You can drag and drop in different headlines, photos, paragraphs, images, etc. Forms, there are all kinds of things you can drop in. I guarantee you that if you spend 20 minutes poking around on it today, you will find that you can build a really quick website, and it's just amazing. Wix is a slightly newer company that comes out of Israel, actually, so we like to support it, and it takes even a more savvy/clean look to your website. So it'll come up with something even a little sharper, might have a bit more of a learning curve at the beginning, but we recommend that you check it out. Now, as you start to think about what you put on your website and how you brand yourself, I know lots of you have already been thinking about what your look is going to look like, what your logo might be. Some of you already have one. For those of you who don't have a logo, first, one step is to potentially find a friend or a colleague who might do it for you pro bono. Lots of people are happy to do that for a social good cause, but not always, because this is their expertise and they could get paid a lot for it. So another way to do it is to sort of crowdsource, and there are a couple really cool platforms out there, including what you see here, 99 Designs, Elance, and Fiverr. And these are all ways to basically work with freelancers who are offering their expertise online. You enter basically what you want it to look like. So you enter the name, the potential color palette you're thinking of, any sorts of themes or images that are evoked when thinking of your idea, and they'll play around with lots of different ideas. So many different artists will actually bid on your name and your logo, and then you get to choose the one you like, and only then do you pay. 99 Designs we've been using for years. We think they're great. They've gotten slightly more expensive over the years, so Elance and Fiverr could be good options as well. Next, another really important element that you can include on your website is some sort of video presentation or other sorts of messaging. So if you find this in your own experience that the more websites you go to that have videos and you find them more compelling, that should carry over to your own work as well. So lots of times you'll enter a website, you'll see a YouTube or something on the homepage, and you'll immediately click it because it's fun and it's engaging. And we recommend that you do something similar. So SlideShare is just a platform that hosts different presentations, so you can think of it as a YouTube for PowerPoints or for presentations, and that allows you to tell your story in a really unique way. So you can create either just a visual presentation that goes from slide to slide, or you can add audio to it. And this can be accomplished on SlideShare by uploading an MP3, which is pretty easy to do. You can just record your voice and then attach it to the slides. Obviously, you can also create a YouTube separately, as I mentioned, kind of a flash video, and embed it within your website. And finally, separate from your website, but if you are looking to share your story in an artistically appealing way, we recommend Prezi, which is a great tool. Many of you have probably seen it. It's an alternative to PowerPoint, so it is used for presentations. However, it is not used in your typical linear format. It actually starts with a blank big canvas, and you're able to sort of build a flow amongst that canvas. Doesn't need to go linearly, can jump all around. I recommend that you check out Prezi.com, and there are a bunch of demos on there that you can view. Next, for both your presentations and your website, it's going to be very helpful, obviously, to have visuals, graphics, pictures, anything that makes your work come to life. I think that having people's faces or action shots is always really, really compelling. But at this stage, you don't have a professional photographer, most likely. This isn't something that you're looking to necessarily spend a lot of money on either. So the next best thing that we recommend is just a couple tools to help you spruce up your non-professional photos. In particular, we've used Pixlr and we've used PicMonkey, and these again allow you to take an existing picture and correct for red eye and brightness and shadowing and color and sharpness and all sorts of things, and you'll see an amazing progression from point A to point B when you use a service like this. We're going to pause at this point, and in the classroom we took some time here to do a workshop to allow you to just play around with a bunch of the tools that we just laid out there, because we know that there are a lot, and most importantly, we want you to see that they are really easy to use, and that once you start playing around with them, the learning curve is really low. So a couple things that we suggest here: you can either check out Namecheck for your desired URL, you can set up a fake Weebly page, which I really recommend. It's also a lot of fun. You can download an image and edit it using one of these tools we mentioned, Pixlr or PicMonkey. Picnic is actually no longer around. You can watch a demo on Prezi. You can check out any of the other tools that we mentioned. So pause the video if you can, take about 20 minutes and just play around with some of these tools. Take longer if you'd like. And of course, you can always reach out to your coordinators or your trainers with some questions. We're going to come back now for part 2. So again, part 1 was all about sharing your vision. So we talked a lot about what is that impact you're looking to make in the world and who are you sharing it with. We talked about a couple different media to help you expand that horizon, expand that base to reach people online. And that's obviously the way things are done these days. Once you put it out there, it's important to start thinking about how to target. So how to not only put a website out there for the world to see, but to start to share with people who care about it, to start to follow others' online presences if they are in a similar field or if they're thinking about similar work. And what are some of the tools that can be most helpful there? So obviously there are lots of interesting success stories out there, including Barack Obama's campaign online and on social media, which was thought to be extremely effective in reaching lots and lots of people, some of them new. First things first, the best way to establish a position online is through text. As much as we're moving to very fancy modes online, you never get away from text, and that exists on email. Obviously, it exists in shorter form on Facebook and Twitter, on blogs. There are all kinds of ways to use text, but the key here is that you are positioning yourself as an expert in a particular area of content. So if you are working in the area of early education, in arts, in Israel advocacy, there are lots of things that you can do and share and write about to show that this is an area you really know a lot about, that you've done your research, perhaps you work in this field, you have what to share, you can start to build thought leadership around this area. So lots of tools. We're going to start with some of the basics, including blogging, which has obviously been around for a long time. Blog is a good place, again, to share analysis, longer articles, perhaps really a regular stream of content. And that's actually key for a blog. If you notice, sometimes you'll check a blog that you want to follow and you see that they haven't actually updated it in about 9 months. So then you figure, you know what, this is not a particularly active blogger, and therefore I'm not going to follow the blog because there won't be much new content. So one thing we'll say is that if you do start a blog, we recommend that you do it only if you're ready to commit to it, that you have it on your calendar, which we'll get to write once a week or whatever you think is the right amount of time so that you're keeping your stream constant. Obviously, try to make it as energetic and entertaining and intriguing as possible so that it's not just sort of a dry piece of writing, obviously, but that you're trying to engage others by asking questions, by asking for comments, by telling interesting stories, etc. There are a couple different platforms you can use. You can see in the bottom right here, the orange B is for Blogger. It's a very common one. The W above it is for WordPress. They're both very easy to use. WordPress tends to be a little more focused on the text, although of course there's room for images and others, and Blogger sometimes has a little more interactivity. So we recommend that you take a look at these for yourself. And whether or not you are going to become a blogger yourself, we actually think it's very useful to start to follow other bloggers who are working in similar fields or similar space, because it keeps you up to date with what the latest is in your field, and you can get a sense for where does your vision fit in. Is anyone else trying something similar? Who are the influential people in the space that you should be following or even referencing or quoting? So like many other techniques or platforms, Google is a great place to start. Google Blogs is a particular search engine that allows you to search for given blogs by subject matter. So you can type in whatever your work is, Israel education for elementary school students, for example, and I guarantee you lots of blogs will show up. Some of them will be related, some won't, and you can start following them to, again, understand what's going on in your field. We recommend that you actually start to track these using what's called an RSS reader, which is a way to basically create a digest for yourself that pulls lots of different blogs for you and just brings them all to one place, so that you don't have to go searching on 12 different blogs every other day, but they're coming right to your reader. So there's something called Google Reader, which is an RSS form, which is something that syndicates all your readings, and we recommend that you set one up for yourself. We talked a bit about long form, which again is blogging and longer thought pieces, and now we want to move to short form, because not only is this area so popular, but there's a reason it's popular. It's easy to use, and it's engaging, and it's kind of addictive. So there are lots of types of short form. Obviously the most common ones you've heard of or you're on all the time are Facebook and Twitter, and lots of ways to post them, and these are used for lots of different things. So keep in mind that this is a community of people, both of them. Facebook, as you know, is generally a little more personal. It's where people share photos of their family and what they're up to that day. Potentially they might share events that they're involved with and things like that. But it tends to be more focused on the personal, little less on the professional, although obviously it's blending a lot. And Twitter, although it is slightly newer than Facebook, has really taken off in recent years and has an enormous base. So it's a great place to start to build support, share events, and things like that. And Twitter, some people say, is a little less about the people and a little bit more about information, content. It's a way to share lots of articles and links. Because Twitter is set up with a limit on characters, then it kind of forces you to think strategically about what to share and how, and what to link to in a longer space. So think for a minute about some examples you've seen online through Facebook, through Twitter, through others that we'll get to. Things that you've seen that are done really well, particularly by companies or by services, and things that you've seen that are poor or that are a little less effective. So you might find that the ones you remember are a little more personal. So even if they're coming from a company, they have a name attached to it. So there's a real human element there. They're often creative. They're often not just selling, but they're engaging around this topic. So they're sharing an interesting tidbit, a question. Again, they often engage in dialogue. So you'll see lots of times conversations on Facebook or Twitter, more so Facebook, where it really builds, again, a human element to the work that they're doing. Twitter, interestingly, has really become a very popular platform for customer service, good and bad. So the beauty of Twitter is that you can basically contact anybody, even if you don't know them, even if you're not friends, including celebrities and including companies in their customer service department. So lots of times you'll see somebody complain about poor service on an airline, and they'll tag someone on Twitter. Or they'll send it to them so that their customer service department checks it out. Obviously, this is for generally larger companies, but to keep it in mind, could be used for good and for bad for people to start interacting with you. And likewise, you can start following them, and you can start checking out what the thought leaders in broader education are in the world, if that's an area that you're focused on. And that way you can start to know what they're saying, maybe retweet what they say to share some value, that sort of thing. So a couple of tips, and I know in this forum this is a lot of just sharing what we think, but we recommend that you talk to your friends, in particular to your cluster from Present Tense, about some good ways to use these platforms and some not good ways. These are platforms you're using all the time, but we do think that there are always lots of things to learn. So one thing I would say is not to be passive, to engage in conversation, to interact and reach out, and remember that they're real people. So just like offline, this is about building relationships, it's about being authentic, and about being transparent. We're going to move on to some other forms of social media. Lots of similar rules apply because these are slightly newer. Some of them don't have quite the same volume of users yet, and also some of them, it hasn't yet been fully demonstrated what their value is, but I think that they're very unique. So Pinterest has really taken off. It's been around for a while, but I'd say in the last 2 years or so it's gotten much bigger. It's a format where you can pin things, you can create different categories and share things that you like, that you've made around different topics and different issue areas. It's very, very visual. There are lots of ways for you to pin images. You can follow people. In fact, you have to follow people if you want to see what they do and to create your own account. We'd love to hear your success stories in this area or anything that you've seen. This is also an opportunity for those of you who haven't used this platform yet, which is many of us, to create one for your vision or for your venture specifically, because it's sort of a new tool that's separate from your own life. So this is a conversation that you should engage in with your friends, but when you think about whether to create your presence connected to yourself and your name and your own Facebook page or totally separate, I think it's a really important question that you need to think about. And people make their own decisions on this. Some feel that they already have their reputation, their positioning socially and professionally, and maybe that's a great thing to capitalize on as they build something new. Or some people feel rightfully so that this is their life and they don't want it to interfere or overlap with the work that they're trying to do. So that's a decision you should make. Instagram is becoming really big as well. As you know, it was bought for a very large sum of money in the last year, so Instagram has really taken off. It is mostly a photo sharing tool, a way to make photos look a little more interesting, sometimes a little old, but you can follow people just as you can on the other social media and engage with them, share pictures, and it becomes a place where people can share many, many pictures as opposed to perhaps on other media like Facebook where they're a little reluctant to put that kind of volume out there. So think a little bit about how these new tools have changed the space and how, even though they don't seem as inherently social, how you can use them to build relationships and what some of the best practices are out there. Now, you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all the different tools, and should you use more than one, how will you stay on top of it? Doesn't it seem to take over your life? So lots of people say this, lots of our fellows voice this concern when we get started with this module. And the truth is, as I said before, first of all, it's not necessary to start using all of these tools immediately. Some of you are already using some of them personally, and this could be just a nice transition. For some of you, you'll feel that one or two of these tools are really exciting to you and relevant, and many others are not. But it is very important to start thinking about how to stay organized. And there are a couple tools out there that help you to categorize and organize and even schedule some of these sharing mechanisms on social media. And just as there are RSS readers, as I mentioned, for blogs, there are Twitter trend trackers that allow you to categorize incoming tweets and also schedule when they go out. So this one here is called Hootsuite. It is wonderful. It allows you to create a dashboard that enables you to categorize incoming tweets by category, either education or Jewish or whatever it is. And also, even more importantly, you can schedule tweets to go out at another time, at a later time. So you can set up all of your tweets for the week or for 2 weeks by saying, by entering kind of all of the statuses that you'll put up and designating a time. And there's even a back-end analytics here that allows you to look at your tweets over time and say, oh, you know what, there was a lot more traffic around my tweet on a Tuesday evening than on a Monday morning. It allows you to test out kind of different times that work best for readership or for followership, and just gives you some new set of data. Next, in addition to tracking just on Twitter, obviously there's a whole web out there of really important information and data, and obviously Google is the largest. You can track topics very specifically using Google Alerts, and many of you probably use this already, but it's a good way to set up an alert so that Google will let you know anytime there is a new article or a new mention of your particular inputted phrase, whether it's just in a line somewhere else or its own article or something like that. Obviously, you want to be as specific as possible here so you're not overloaded. Google Alerts allows you to set it up either that you see the alerts as soon as they come in, that they are in digest form once a day, once a week, whatever you want. I would recommend putting your own name in this alert. Believe it or not, sometimes you are written about without knowing about it, and it's always helpful. Obviously, the name of your venture, perhaps the names of competitors or of other relevant players in the space, and maybe even just a general area of interest that's related to your work you can put into Google Alerts. This is something I really recommend. Now, as I mentioned, there are lots of tools that we suggested, and you're not going to use all of them, but as you do start to incorporate more and more of them, we recommend putting together a schedule, not only to schedule tweets to go out in advance, but to just have a general sense of when you're using what medium to get the word out. And this is an example of a calendar from a busier company that had a presence on multiple forums and updated them every day. But they didn't want it to be inconsistent, so they would have Twitter 3 times a week, they would have Facebook only once, blogs on Thursdays or Fridays, and that sort of thing. So we recommend that you use this as inspiration to set up a similar calendar if you'd like. At the beginning, it may only have one thing a week, and that's fine, but it just keeps you on track, and it also keeps you consistent for your users. And while I'm at it, just to keep in mind that there are different ways to share on these different tools. So of course, Twitter is a much more concise way of sharing than on a blog, but that also allows you to think about your angle within different media. So what is the way you're presenting yourself? Or are you presenting one consistent message and blasting it out on many different channels to reach different people? So it's all about just building your strategy. Take a minute and think about not only your favorite tool that came up today that maybe you learned new or you reaffirmed why you love it so much, or think about a tool that wasn't mentioned here, because there were lots that weren't, and please share them with your cohort. Share them so that others can know what else is out there. This is by no means exhaustive, but we wanted to keep it somewhat limited in scope, and start to incorporate these favorite tools as you go. We'll ask you to just take a minute and jot down a couple main takeaways that you have from this session, both in terms of thinking about strategy around building your online presence and takeaways around the particular tools that you think you'll work with. So take a minute, let it digest, maybe even take a little time and work through some more of these tools, test them out, demo them, come prepared with any questions to your coordinator or to your trainers, and we hope that you'll use these throughout. Next month, coming up next, is social business models and prototyping.